All right, the Great Crash. On September 29th, 1929, all the good times that people were having in America and really the world um, came crashing down when the stock market exploded, just collapsed on itself. And the reasons are still being debated today. I'll try to make some sense. It's very complicated, but there's some things that you just need to know. And the first thing is stocks. What is a stock? Well, that's our first vocabulary word. Stocks are money raised by a business by selling shares of an ownership in the company. So, for instance, if you own a business and you don't have enough money to start the business, or you need more money to expand your business, let's say, then you may sell parts of the company to somebody else. You may say, okay, if you give me $10,000, I'll give you 50% of the company. And so they have half the stocks and you have half the stocks. Now, most people can't afford to buy IBM or Apple or anything like that. They're just so huge, and these companies are very, very big. So, in order for a regular person like you or me to get involved with these companies, we buy a small amount of stocks. And that might be 0.0001% of the company, but at least we own part of the company and we can share in their good fortune. And that's what was happening in the 20s is that all these stocks were going up in price. Everybody was seeing how great everybody was doing. And so people kept pouring more and more money into these companies thinking, oh my goodness, they're going to keep going up and I'm going to get left behind. And then if I buy it later, I'm going to have to pay more for it. And everybody's making so much money. I want to get in on the action. And so people started spending more and more money on stocks, paying higher and higher prices, which they just weren't worth. And it was because of optimism. That's our second word, the belief that everything is going to work out well. Because people are so optimistic, things were going so well that they thought it would never end, that it was just going to keep going up and these stock prices would continue to go up. And so they started speculating, which is our third word, making an investment that is risky but might bring big profits. So here's an example. There's another computer company that makes phones like Apple, there's another iPhone, and they're brand new and everything looks really good, and you want to get involved, and their price is very low right now. And so if you put enough money into it, so let's say it's $10 a share and you buy $1,000, well, now you've got 100 shares of that. And if that price goes up even, let's say it goes up um, to $20 a share, now you've made $1,000 if you sell right there, because now what you bought at $1,000 is now worth $2,000. And so people think they see all these prices going up and up as time goes on, and they want to get in on it because they know if they invest now early, they'll make a lot of money. And so all these new companies start coming on, and people don't have the money to spend on these stocks. So where are you going to go to get your money if you don't have it? Well, if you haven't figured it out yet, the answer is a bank. You go to a bank and you borrow the money, and then you take that money and they start speculating. They start putting it into these stocks. But what happens if those stocks go down? And you borrowed the $1,000 to spend on your company, and now it's worth $5 a stock. It's now worth half. So the $1,000 you sent it is only worth $5,000 now, or $500, excuse me. And then you cash out and you get the $500. Well, the bank, you still owe the bank $1,000 plus interest. How are you going to pay them back? And so when the stocks start coming down, this bubble, all these bubbles that were being created in the economy of all these high stocks, when they start coming down and people had borrowed money, then what happens to the banks now? So people go to the banks because they're short on money. And the banks are like, no, we lent it out to these guys that can't pay us back anymore, so we don't have the cash. And so once people start realizing that the banks don't have the cash, um, everybody panics and runs to their bank to get money. But even the good banks don't have all the cash that everybody had given them because they lent it out to people who had good investments. And so the bad investments corrupt the good investments. I know it's very complicated. just understand that all this speculation, this optimism had worked against us. And so people were overpaying for stocks. And when they started coming down, it had a spiraling chain of events type of thing going on that destroyed the economy, put banks out of business, and then when banks couldn't, there was no banks to lend out money to businesses to keep the cash flow going. Then businesses started going out of business, and then people started going out of work. And if those people didn't have money to go spend money on the products that these good businesses have, then they had to cut back and start laying off people. And you could just see how it just spirals out of control. Another thing that made things worse in a lot of people's minds is that the American government raised tariffs to try to protect American companies. And a tariff is a tax placed on items from other countries and often used to limit trade. So what this definitely did was it spread the problems that America had to the rest of the world. If Americans weren't going to spend money on foreign goods, then those foreign companies will start losing money and they'll have to lay off workers. And so all this stuff that starts in America starts spreading throughout the world. And the entire world goes into a depression. And what a depression is that you have a severe economic downturn. Businesses are doing terrible. People are out of work. Nothing is really going on. And so all of a sudden, in just a very short period of time, all this wonderful times of everybody making money and getting rich turns into everybody starting to get poor. And this is not what was supposed to happen. We had institutions in place that were supposed to help, namely the Federal Reserve. I'm going to give a shout out to the Federal Reserve. It was created to safeguard against exactly the type of problem, the type of collapse of the banking system that we saw in the Great Depression. They completely failed, which leads to the question, why do we even have a Fed? It still exists to this day. Why is there a Federal Reserve if they're not going to help us in this type of crisis? And so, yeah, we go into a major economic downturn, the Great Crash, what was it, Black Thursday on October 24th, 1929.